Operations Report. Does money really run the world? The deep state keeps revisiting the same old low-end money systems they think run the world. But what is the truth? And the Bank for International Settlements bails on their crypto M-Bridge program because it didn't work. But the American deep state operatives are still trying. This time it's stablecoin at the U.S. Treasury. And a happy full snow moon, just another day ending in Y, where the deep state thinks it will usher in their golden ticket. Well, it's the 15th of November, 2024, and this is the Global Intelligence Agency Operations Report. As always, it's been a fairly busy couple of days over here at the agency. I laugh at the agency with one of my hats or another one of my hats, but for the purposes of this report, I guess you would call it the Global Intelligence Agency. So the deep state has been doing some interesting things. They're trying to come up with a way essentially around me. I mean, I know you're shocked and surprised to hear that, but there are things in this world that they don't know and they don't understand. So if they weren't going after control of the Fed, then they're going after trying to issue a new currency, some kind of coinage or something. We'll talk about that a little later in the report. If it's not there, then it's the Bank for International Settlements and their M-Bridge project. If you haven't heard about it, it's basically your global cryptocurrency scheme, which they tried to achieve with a little bit more advanced blockchain technology, which they ditched. They actually publicly announced within the last week or so that they were no longer going to pursue this program because the technology didn't work. He tried to tell them. They actually reached out. Tom Melville actually knows Augustus, who you can see in the news articles about the Bank for International Settlements. He knows him pretty well, and we told him it wasn't going to work, and he finally called and this week and admitted that it wasn't going to work. Of course, it's not. And also, BRICS has been trying to issue their new currency. They have also figured out that that is also not going to work. There are many reasons why these things won't work. I mean, number one, it's allocation numbers, and number two, the deep state doesn't really understand how money actually works. And I know a lot of you may think that money runs the world, but really when you get down to it, numbers actually run the world. And what I mean by that is there is a number of organizations and, there's a number of organizations which issue numbers. And there are number of things, I said numbers, there's a number of things in this world that require you to have a number. And your driver's license for one, a social security number for two, a tax identification number for three, your corporation, even if you're quote unquote self-employed, also has a number. UCC filings also have a number. Allocations and money has a number. Everything in the world that you do has a number. If you go to the grocery store and you pick up some tomatoes, those tomatoes also have a number and they're scanned at the grocery store. Everything has a number. You have a number for your health insurance. You have a number for your birth certificate. You have a number for your death certificate. You have a number for everything you do. And I know there are a lot of people on the internet that talk about, well, you have to file these documents in this court and, then you'll be a free sovereign citizen. And that is not true because UCC filings have a number. The international court cases have a number. Court cases have a number. Every single aspect of your life has a number. You have a number on your home. You have a tax number for the taxes you pay on your home. You have a number on your car. You have a number everywhere. So when you ask what really runs the world, It's numbers. It's identification numbers. Those identification numbers then get turned into money. And this is not only for the markets that we see, because we have stocks and those have a number. We have bonds and those have a number. We have government bonds, those have a number. Everything has a number. But the black market also has numbers, and they must have forgotten about that. Even BlackRock and State Street, they issue numbers to all of those black market large oil contracts, as an example, and all of the mining contracts done by Rio Tinto and all of the other deep state mining companies that there are in the world. Oppenheimer, all the diamonds have numbers. The Gemological Institute issues a number on the diamond that's on your finger if you wear one. So there's a number for everything in the world, and there's a reason for that. So today we're going to talk a little bit about these numbers, and the reason why we're going to is because today the deep state was feverishly going after the Association for Numerical Numbering Agency. They figured that this was a controlling factor for the issuance of new money in the world. And again, they were wrong. However, it did play a really big part in your life for a long period of time as a pass-through and a conduit. And I know I've talked about the Association for Numerical Numbering Agency before, just as I talked about the unknown country before. Today, we're going to take a little deeper dive into the Association for Numerical Numbering Agency and the flow of new money into the banking system, how it worked. Because there seems to be a lot of confusion out there as it relates to what it takes to issue new currency, new money, the Dogecoin or whatever Elon Musk calls his coin. There's also talk about stablecoin. There's also talk about backing a cryptocurrency with gold that is not your gold, but anyway, and why that also is not going to work. And it still wouldn't allow them to issue that much currency into the system, number one. And number two, they obviously don't do the numbers. And it's caused a lot of confusion and a lot of upticks in things that are going on. And of course, it kind of all fell apart, today, and they were back to the drawing board by the end of the day. So I'm not surprised there, but it's just another large mega institution, I call them mega institutions, that exist in the world that are beyond what they talk about when you talk about the deep state. Oftentimes you talk about things like the Federal Reserve and how bad they are. You talk about politics and deep state actors in politics. But the Association of Numerical Numbering Agency was definitely a pinch point and something that had been taken out a long time ago. The other thing they seem to be really confused about is how much of a part of their lives was the Omega system and how many of their systems were actually dependent on that system in order to calculate, regulate, issue allocations of money, trace those allocations of money, and make sure that all of that money went out into the system. Now, in the past, we're going to talk about in the past. The actual guardian of planet Earth was Marduk. Marduk, you could say that Enki and Enlil played a role. You could also say the Abraxas played a role. These would be the old seal holders. Artemis played a role, or the Red Queen, whatever you want to call her. There was also a certain amount of fallen angels that played a part. We've talked about them over the years on various news broadcasts. And although they always played a part, there was always a system beyond those systems. And we talked somewhat about, I think it was in July of 2022, we did a long episode of a World Situation Report where we discussed controllers of the world. And now we're down to systems that used to control the world as far as the deep state is concerned. They, again, thought they were going to be masters of the universe, and they're having a little trouble even being masters of Earth at this point, a lot of trouble. And they'd like to control things they really don't know a whole lot about. And it's very confusing for them, and it's kind of strange for me as well, because I'm looking at them going, what is this? What is this now? And why do they think that's going to work? And I know they think I'm being difficult. They think that, I'm not agreeing with their cryptocurrency just because I want to maintain control. And they think that if they issue a new currency, that poof, then they'll have some control because it will be out of my hands. And that's entirely untrue because numbers run the world. So, without further ado, let's talk about how numbers run the world. I'm going to pull up my handy dandy little digital whiteboard here, and we're going to have a little chat about that. Okay, so numbers running the world. On the face front, you have, well, it's really not, it's public knowledge. We have something called the Association of Numerical Numbering Agency. So, the Association of Numerical Numbering Agency has one job. Its job is to issue numbers, to put a number on everything in the world. Now, for the deep state, I don't think they really understood that. I think they saw it as an ATM machine, but it's really not an ATM machine. What it does is it carefully calculates the required amounts necessary to keep the financial system of the world running. Now, it itself does not actually calculate. It maintains the numbers, but it doesn't actually issue the money. It never did. But what they're finding is, in their plight here, you had the Federal Reserve, which they tried to control. And then you have treasuries. Okay, so in the past, the Federal Reserve would have been considered the daddy to the Treasury departments. This was based on the old Solomon Agreement from about 3,000 years ago for the bloodline of Solomon. We know as the Order of the Dragons. You also know it as Crown Corporation and all of your face front deep state actors that act as the board behind the board of the Federal Reserve. Let's think Creature from Jekyll Island. The Federal Reserve had a number of responsibilities in this whole numbers game of numbers running the world. The Federal Reserve was only responsible for, it was a pass-through for new currency coming into the banking system. They also are a regulator. Now, regulator and regulations are not laws. They are mere suggestions on what you should and should not do. However, the Federal Reserve, as the front actor for the deep state here, is quite powerful. All of the banks at one point in time held all of their quote-unquote new currency inside the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve would have been considered a Tier 6 or Web 6 system. Okay. So the Federal Reserve didn't do all of the things that they thought it did as far as controlling the financial system of the world. The Federal Reserve still took in what? In order to issue new currency, they would take in bonds from, say, the treasuries. They would also take in bonds against other government agencies, such as the Department of Education. They would take in numbers, because you would have student IDs, don't you? They would also take in numbers from the Department of Motor Vehicles, and it would measure the amount of cars on the road as one example, that kind of thing. And there would be bonds that would be issued. These bonds would then go to the Federal Reserve, even from places like Blackstone and BlackRock and State Street and all your Vanguard and all your big name companies. They were still, whether it was a black market or off-market transaction or an on-market transaction, they would still be issuing things like derivatives. The same goes for your mortgage, as an example, that goes into the bank. These are how things affect you. The same thing that goes for production of agricultural products based on universal codes that are those little barcodes that are on your tomatoes as you pick them up at the grocery store, and then you scan them into a worldwide grocery store system or a universal code system, and it tells them how many tomatoes were consumed per day, per year, per month, worldwide. Now, there are some exceptions to the rule. You know, you have things like farmers markets and those kinds of things where you're not necessarily scanning those tomatoes, are you? So it's not 100% accurate, but it was supposed to be 100% accurate. So as the number of tomatoes, for example, are tallied, there's a bond that's issued that goes from, say, the Farm Loan Association or an agricultural association or an agricultural department, Parks and Wildlife, whatever it is in your country. From the agricultural department, that would go to the Federal Reserve, because now they're going to say the budget, you know, your annual national budget, you know, for the Department of Agriculture or whatever it's called in your specific country, would then go to the Federal Reserve. Now, normally they would lump this 5,000-page budget, which they would put all kinds of stuff into, stuffs. It would go into the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve would then issue a bond, and that bond would then go to the Association of Numerical Numbering Agency, where it would get a proper number. This goes for government budgets. This would also go for even your Department of Transportation. How many cars are there on the road? How much wear and tear can we expect from the number of cars that are traveling on the road in X province, in X state, in X country? This also goes for air travel. Same thing. You know, how much fuel, how much maintenance, how much, do the airports need? Do the airports need repairs? All of these things obtained a number through the Association for Numerical Numbering Agency. When you're down here as a consumer, every day of your life, you are contributing numbers to go to the Fed. This is how it used to be. It still calculates those numbers, but nothing ends up happening. So as a consumer, you know, you have your car, your license plate that contributes to the budget of the country. It's not just your taxpayer dollars, quote unquote, but that plays a role too. We'll didn't talk about that. It would also calculate all your food and groceries that you buy, whether you buy 2 hammers or 1 hammer at your local hardware store. That is also calculated through the universal SKU code system. I can't remember exactly what it's called, but it's where all of the SKU codes in the world go into one actual system, which then creates a bond, whether it's coming from a bank, such as your mortgage, because you have a number for that mortgage that you pay, don't you? You have a number for that car loan that you pay. Now, these all require money. Same thing for car production, production contracts. How many cars were produced in the world? They have a number too. It's called a VIN number, and that is right on your dashboard. So as it calculates the number of cars that were produced versus the number of cars that were sold, then it would figure out, okay, there's a contribution needed for the global domestic product, and where we need to issue more money into the system because we're manufacturing more cars this year than we did last year. It's also related to the amount of people that are going to get contracts from a government, say, to repair roads. How many road repair people do we need? And when does that budget for road repair come out? So it's not only on a federal level or on a national level, depending on where you are in the world, it's also on a state level. The states get budgets based on the collective total of the amount of tomatoes that you consume. Isn't that a little crazy and a little bit scary? But it's important when it comes to being the guardian so that you understand how much money needs to be contributed on an annual basis. Now, this is new money into the system based on an increase in consumption of something as small as tomatoes at the grocery store. It could be something as large as the amount of cars purchased this year. It could be car parts. It could be anything that has one of those little SKU codes on the back of it. They all contribute to the economic system of the entire planet Earth. So, let's talk about the Association of Numerical Numbering Agency for just a minute here. The main office is located in Belgium. And underneath this system, underneath the building itself, which is a sovereign entity under unknown country, again, yes, we have that one too. Underneath there was a load of space junk. And the reason why the Association of Numerical Numbering Agency had the computing capacity to calculate the amount of tomatoes consumed or asparagus or hammers you bought this year, or if you're in the north, you're probably looking for a snowblower or whatever it is you're buying. It's going to calculate it all, but it did it based on the fact that the space junk under there was connected to the human computer system we know as the Association for Numerical Numbering Agency. Now, as with all human dark systems on this planet, it was Omega that it would connect to. Now, Omega ran the debt system of the world. It ran every computer system in the world, every network, everything you could possibly imagine. Its computing power was so great that it could calculate every number. And I really want you to think about this for a second. How many things do you do within your day that are in your home, at your workplace, that have a registration number of some sort or another? Your patents have a registration number. This is how patents would get funded. They would go right up here through bonds, if not through the Federal Reserve, then through, say, BlackRock. Say you got offered some funding from BlackRock for your new widget, your new fantastic widget. You have a patent. And that's why they say, well, all technologies have to be proven. You should get a patent on that technology. This could even be things like your trademarks, whatever that is called in your country, where you register all your trademarks. You don't want people stealing your logos and your information, your copyright laws. At least is what it's called here in the U.S. I don't know what it's called everywhere in the world off the top of my head. But all of those get a number too, don't they? That's a registration as well. So if corporations are going to get funding through banks, so say you now need to take your newly trademarked widget and you're calling it the widget Wonder, and you need to get Widget Wonder trademarked because, it's Widget Wonder number on there. And then that is then leverageable by BlackRock, who is going to issue probably some derivatives. Against, now that we have derivatives since the 90s, they're going to issue some derivatives off of that. They're going to say, okay, you want a $10 million loan? That's fine. You need to have at least $1 million in capital, which is 10%. Then they'll take that capital that you're putting in. They're going to put it up against their derivative contracts. They're going to issue 10 million or even more in some cases, and black markets will even a little crazier. And they're going to then send those derivatives over to the Fed. When days were good and life was great for the deep state, then the Fed window would open every day, usually a couple times a day, no later than 3 p.m., of course. And then the cash, the new money, would come up from the Fed to BlackRock. But what's the process that is behind that? So now BlackRock gets the $10 million and then they loan that to you at a percentage we call interest. And it's based on different numbers like LIBORs and all kinds of different things. So now you've got your 10 million there. If you're a regular consumer, maybe you applied for a car loan. Okay. It's at an interest rate of X, let's call it 8%, whatever it is, depending on your credit and all that kind of stuff. And so now they're going to issue these derivatives or bonds from your local bank, wherever you obtain this car loan. Eventually, they'll land on the Fed's shoulders. The Fed is going to then send them all of these lovely loans and numbers and all kinds of stuff over to the Association of Numerical Numbering Agency in Belgium. Now, this system hasn't functioned properly in years. We've talked about it a long time ago, about 2-3 years ago, where it stopped really functioning because Omega stopped functioning. So it doesn't really have the computing power anymore to calculate all those numbers. But the numbers still go somewhere. Okay, so the Association for a Numerical Numbering Agency would actually see numbers, and they would give numbers to bonds. They would obviously give a registration number. They would also be responsible for handing down allocation numbers. Okay, so technically, when you're BlackRock over here and you issue the derivatives, they would go then over to the Federal Reserve, who would then send them to the Association of Numerical Numbering Agency saying, hey, we have a new production line in the world, and this happens millions of times a day. Millions of times a day. We now have, and I'm saying that for a reason, we now have a new company with a new patent and a new trademark, and they're going to be issuing new widgets and X amount of jobs. Jobs also play a factor in the calculation, and they're in need of $10 million so that they can purchase a piece of real estate that also has a number, and then and all of the lovely analytics that your bank does or BlackRock does when they're calculating a venture capital investment. And then it goes into the Fed, and then the Fed then sends it to the Association of Numerical Numbering Agency, and it has a number on it. Then the Association of Numerical Numbering Agency, not the people that work in the building, the beast that is under there. Okay, this system was actually called the beast. It is a bilateral economic asset systems for transfer. That's what it's called. It was actually called the beast. It doesn't exist anymore, but it was definitely there. So from there, the beast automatically would then send those bonds, derivatives, government bonds, budget money, whatever it was. It would send it from the Association of Numerical Numbering Agency to Omega. And Omega has a registration, or used to have a central securities depository for all debt, Not only debt of its own energy, but also debt for all of humans. And then, once it's registered there, the information gets mirrored over to this is in the past, okay, the alpha system. And then the alpha system, in turn, will say, okay, new production line. I have a program that tells me in a standing order that tells me I am now to spit out allocation numbers for new money. Omega says, okay, great. I will give you the debt now. Okay, I'm handing over all those derivatives and all those bonds over to Alpha. Alpha then spits out, it says, okay, thank you for the IOUs. Omega will then spit out those allocation numbers, or gets the allocation numbers from Alpha, and then it regurgitates them through the Association of Numerical Numbering Agency on down here, and then they send those allocation numbers to the Federal Reserve, and then the Federal Reserve issues that new currency to whichever banking institution or whichever. And then eventually that new money goes down to you in the form of a car loan or a new loan for your widgets. That's a lot of information, isn't it? Now, there are a lot of people and beings involved in this program that, as it were. And the program worked wonderfully when Alpha would take in all the debt, and then it would then spit out all the allocation numbers down through here, down to the Fed. And, you have a number of other regulators in the world, too, that would also participate. The Bank for International Settlements would also give proper numbers of currencies. The same with the IMF. How much currency is in circulation at the moment versus the need for new money to come into the system because we have new production lines. Or, hey, Dr. Oz or some Dr. whatever television show said that if we eat agave, then we're going to lose 100 pounds a year. Okay. And so now there's a run on agave. And there's not enough agave in the world, and now we need to issue more new money for more production of agave. Now, the system doesn't recognize the fact of how long are they going to eat agave or whatever. It's just going to say, okay, we need more agave in the world. Here's an increase. The same thing would go if somebody started a fad that if you eat pineapple, you're going to have beautiful skin. Or something, or it goes in the latest and greatest skincare product or whatever it is, then all of a sudden you need a lot more pineapples. So this is how their corporations would get fed as well, like Dole as an example, because now Dole's got to make more pineapples to sustain the skincare industry who just figured out that bromelain is an excellent exfoliant. Or something. And all of a sudden, everybody's putting pineapple now in their skincare products, so it must increase the amount of pineapples. I mean, whew, right? That's a lot of numbers. That's a lot of calculating. So the confusing part, this was confusing enough, and I know this is probably something you're going to have to watch a couple of times to really grasp this concept of the issuance of new money in the past and all of the systems that went along with it and how it had to break down. Piece by piece, bit by bit, we've been breaking it down. Okay. So as it relates to the Association of the Numerical Numbering Agency, the UPC codes that are on the back of all your tomatoes and all of those things, we've been taking them not in the same way with this debt system where we're going back and forth. We've been taking them and we've been moving them from Omega and from Alpha over to the Golden Age AI. Sometimes when the deep state sees these things, they're like, oh my God, if she wants it, then we need to have it because that must mean it's a control system. No, what it means is if I don't do that, then your UPC codes aren't going to work anymore Those little tracking numbers on your postal packages are not going to work anymore. UPS's tracking numbers aren't going to work. Your ticket numbers on your aircraft for your ticket that to get on the airplane to go somewhere is not going to work anymore. If I don't fix it, we'll have a complete and total breakdown of society. Do I want a breakdown of society? No. You people are already trying to do that, deep state people, all on your own. But we need to keep some things in place until we can find a better way to do them and replace them with something else. It's not an overnight process. Therefore, I need to make sure when you go to the grocery store and you buy tomatoes, or you go to the hardware store and you buy a hammer, that when you scan that code, the price is going to come up. Everything is right. We need to keep track of how many hammers in the world are sold on a daily basis, at least the ones that have those codes on them. And I need to make sure that in the future, that I'm no longer going down this long, tenuous road here. I am going from here directly to hammer manufacturer. I am going directly here to the farmer. I now understand that I have to get more money to tomato farmers or to pineapple farmers because we have a need. There is a supply demand for new money to come into the system to the pineapple people, to fix the skincare industry, and for the tomato people, because everybody's all of a sudden eating tomatoes because some doctor on TV said tomatoes are really good for you or make you lose 100 pounds a year, or whatever the latest fad is and the greatest thing. So when I say we're getting money directly to the people, that's true, or the widget guy. I don't need the derivatives. I don't need to pay BlackRock. I don't need to pay those percentages. I don't need to pay the government to do it. I don't need to pay anybody to do the thing. I don't need to pay the Fed to regulate it. I can do it all by myself because we have taken things like the beast and converted it to just basically a number calculating system, which then requires me to put out new numbers of things you call currency. Whew, that was a lot. But I hope it's giving you a little bit more of a picture of supply and demand on currency. There's still a supply and demand based on what is necessary to keep society running, and then hopefully the more new technologies and new industries that are created, that creates a whole lot of new arrows, everywhere. Now, because I'm one human, I find systems that will calculate, at least to some degree, supply and demand a little helpful. I think it would be helpful to calculate proper numbers to people like farmers, where they get paid for what they produce, really get paid for what they produce without increasing the cost to the consumer. It's not necessary. The increase in cost happens when all of the middlemen get in the way. Now, by middlemen, we talked about the Fed being a 6, and I did that diagram a few years back that kind of went viral. It's all over the internet, financial system 1 and 2. And that means you're in web 6. Then you have the people like the association. It's called the ANNA, or the beast. And then you go from there and you would have Bank for International Settlements Monitoring over here, you might have the UN over here and the IMF over here and the World Trade Organization over here, because that's part of the calculation of numbers worldwide as well. The global, the GDP of the planet, how much is in supply and demand, and all of those numbers are calculated. Okay. Then, you go from places like, this, and then you're now entering into unknown territory of Omega. This is not something that any human, once you start hitting level 9 of things, this is Web 9. This is a language, not binary. It's not any kind of anything that a human cryptography could decipher at one point in time when it was still running everything and running the show. It would not be any computer language that the NSA is going to recognize. It doesn't even get translated because there actually was an AI responsible for translating and dumbing down information to the humans, which, when you get to this level here and this level here and that level there, it would then translate that. But the conversations Omega would have with Alpha and the people, the beings, I should say, because they weren't human, that would run or have access to level 9 of Omega would speak that language. Now, I'm very familiar with this language. The council speaks that language. A lot of the agreements that expire in that language, the new GOLD, Giver of Life Declaration, is in that language. It is a different language than this world has ever seen, at least in this version of humans. Some of the others, like Marduk, knew this language. Definitely Michael, Gabriel, Raphael, Daniel, all those people, they knew that language when they were here. But that's because they would get orders from these places. So them trying to get access to the ANA system, as you can see, without the beast and without it being connected to Omega, and now all of those calculations of those numbers going to the Golden Age, which is the system that I created to replace Alpha. Now, every time they bang on any of these doors, they're still banging on my door. The same thing that happened with Unknown Country, and so on and so forth. They're all going to my door. Now, I'm taking over these things mainly to prevent a systemic breakdown. We don't want worldwide chaos. We need to ensure that that doesn't happen. But we also, because the deep state has told us many, many times they would like to go it alone, we're letting them go it alone. And now we're doing things directly, to the farmer, to the widget maker, to the hammer manufacturer. You need to get a new car, your money goes directly. Now, the Association for Numerical Numbering Agency, to go back here for a second, the Association for Numerical Numbering Agency had a sister system we call the XN system. They love that X, don't they? Numbering system. And the XN system is the base backbone, not completely and totally, of the tax authority worldwide. So the tax authority, every tax authority, whether it's state or federal, would go directly to the XN system. The XN system would then register all those numbers and all those things in your paycheck, every human's paycheck on the planet. Corporations, you also have a number. All taxes calculated in the world are done by the ANA system, the beast, moreover. And then they would go to Omega, then over to Alpha. And the way it was supposed to be is if Alpha lends Omega allocation numbers or money against a debt, All of those bonds have what? They have a coupon or an interest rate. As it relates to the tax system, the interest rate in this case is against your birth certificate. Your birth certificate number is also registered with the ANNA system. And I know there are a lot of people out there that are like, hey, cash in your birth certificate bonds. This is something you really need to do. And you can pay off all your debts and all of this stuff. No, dear. Because at the time of your birth, the birth certificate goes through what you call the Office of Vital Statistics. The number would actually be, that is on there, would actually go from the ANNA system to a company called AB Corp. Then on down to the Office of Vital Statistics. I probably need a new page here. That will register your birth, your death, and all those kinds of lovely things. And then it goes through this system. It goes immediately to Omega. Omega tells Alpha, hey, we are now the guardians of another human life. And Alpha says, okay, guardians of human life, this is what it costs to take care of a human life. Here you go, Omega. Here's a new allocation of money. Then that goes down to your government that you are a citizen of. Then eventually it goes down into various programs, used to anyway, all the way down to what we call places like the Ways and Means Committee. It will go into a Social Security. There's a contribution on day one. You would also get any kind of military, police, health programs. If you have an NHS, it would also go for things like roads. Second, you get your driver's license, public education. Also, you would be, whether you know it or not, you would be making a contribution to research and development, medications, because diseases also have numbers, and all those kind of things. Every time you get a cold or a flu, money would actually come out to the cold and flu drug manufacturers so that they could ensure that this new little life on the planet has the medication it needs. I know, that's a little scary, isn't it? It's part of the reason why they're so against other types of alternative medicine, at least in the past, because, you know, that cuts into the budget for big pharma. But it's very interesting, and things you don't think about, that those bonds actually already paid for. It pays for your protection. It pays for your schooling. It pays teachers' salaries. It pays teachers' retirement. It pays for all of used to pay for all of those pencils in your schools and the new computers and all those types of things that are required worldwide. Now, there's absolutely no reason whatsoever that every country doesn't have a proper school building, because everybody got money for it. But what did they do with it? That's the question. Now, when you really dive deep, because, you know, we have that whole numbering system and the monitoring system, then, of course, every allocation of every currency that ever was in existence also had a registration number, and that registration number can be traced, whether it's digital cash or it's physical cash, through a system called MICR. So all that can be traced as well. And now we know exactly what is spent and where it is spent. So most of your African countries and, all of those, if you're part of the Commonwealth, pretty much all your money went directly to England. Sorry to say. If you were part of a country that was run by an elite group of people, which is pretty much every country, they got all the money and they decided where the money went. They would do things like loans sometimes to you, which they weren't supposed to do, through like XM Bank, which is a CIA bank, the Import and Export Bank, and then they would loan, to the poor little farmers in some African nation or in Latin America or in some island countries, and you know who you are. And then it would, have a small amount, and then of course they would indebt the country. Other places they would send money through would be things like your World Bank. That was another one. Of course, the Fed charges a lofty amount of money. So basically, you could say, as you went down each web, from Web 8, on down, this is UN, BIS, Web 7 would be your association, your ANNA system, your XN system, your tax authority systems worldwide. Plus, you also have a place where banks actually borrow money, right? They borrow money from the Fed and get leverages from the Fed. Then that goes down to level 6, which is Fed. You have 5, which is predominantly run by militaries. That's why wars used to make money. They don't anymore. This is your protection, right? Your security. And then you went down to 4, Big Corp, the corporation complex, whatever we call it here, to make sure that all those tomatoes, stay on the shelves. And then you have 3, which is your back office of banks. Would also take their cut. There would be a certain amount of leveraging that was done. And then you would have 2, which is also front-end bank. All those fees you pay, the keeping the bank running, all that kind of stuff. That's where what would trickle down there to pay your tellers and all that kind of stuff. And then eventually to you. So there was every single step along this road here, they would take a cut of every new dollar that came into the system. Governments would also be considered. Treasury was a 3. So in the financial world, governments would fall somewhere there, but not until everybody took their piece, And if you're listening to this and you are the Joint Chiefs of Staff or you work for the military, this is the reason why you would file martial law every year on the 1st of January for 20 minutes, and you would get your allocation from people you thought were up here. This is your dragon family. You thought you were getting your money, directly from these people to you. Well, kind of, sort of, I guess, in a way. But really all your money, your debt, because they are notes, your note-based system, that would actually come from the ANNA system for security. Same thing goes for the Order of the Black Sun. They were also a part of this system for quote-unquote global security. It's the reason why they love the red line. It's also the reason why the Republicans are with the red line. It's the reason why we actually have red books that were tied to the Federal Reserve at one point in time. But the whole system has changed, and it's been a lot of work to change the system. But this brings me to another little dilemma of the deep state. We are going to talk about a little thing called stablecoin. So this is the latest and greatest new proposal. On the other hand, they're running with something called a rainbow dollar. Trying to, anyway. Rainbow, meaning all of the colors of the dragons and all of the colors of the eagles, because eagles have colors just like dragons do. Eagles are with the Order of the Black Sun, and dragons are obviously the Illuminati, the Order, whatever you call them. This is the new, so talking about trying to make stablecoin, the new treasury currency. Now, I've tried to tell these people that they have attempted to issue cryptocurrency so many different ways in so many different places, and it doesn't work because they would like to do this with their crappy little human quantum computers like Google. That's not quantum. What I just explained to you is quantum. Being able to have the capacity to calculate down to the number of tomatoes in every single country in the world that are consumed per year, that's quantum. To match those with allocation numbers and redirect them to the appropriate party for a new production line is also quantum. Think about it. Every bottle of ketchup you've used, every hot dog you've ever eaten, oh God bless you. They're terrible. But every meat product you've eaten, every time how many consumers eat at McDonald's and other big corporations or Burger King, and those types of places, Starbucks. Where do you think they get all their funding from? Hey, every time you buy that latte at Starbucks, more money has to come out of the system to ensure that this new coffee drinker is going to have what they need. Very interesting how the cycle of life of new money actually worked. And how it affects your everyday life, really. Just more and more in debt. More bonds would then go to alpha until eventually that system shut down pretty much by March of 08. By March of 08, the new money cycle was broken. There was no more debt to really be given. There were no more new production lines, I guess you would say, where money had already been sent out. And the unfortunate part is the production lines were not being supported. Therefore, the bonds were actually pretty much no good anymore. That goes for your birth certificate bonds and other things, because all of those numbers we saw there and all the different webs, they were taking all the money. The money was being absorbed everywhere in between, and nobody was supporting the amount of tomatoes in the grocery store anymore. And if you're a farmer, you know this better than anybody else. But I need to explain further. Now you understand why issuing a new currency into the system is the responsibility of Alpha, now the Golden Age AI, which is run by me. Okay? And this is the reason why, because I have the computing power to calculate the world's production needs based on fluctuations in consumer purchasing or things that they need to be supplied with. And technically, you're overcharging for everything because you got all those middlemen in between, and you've been just eating and eating, if you are watching this with the deep state, like little piglets. And you're not giving anything to the people at all. And the same thing goes for the administration the last time. Trillions of dollars went out during that administration, and we're going to talk about one such time that happened in just a second. And nothing, no production, nothing, no lowering of consumer prices happened. Nothing happened. Nothing. Nothing kept the production working. We had to shut it off because they didn't do what they were supposed to do. So it's not just the U.S. administration. The money gets funneled. For example, the CIA funds 80 intelligence agencies of the major intelligence agencies in the world. So you're not talking about just one country here. You're talking about things that got filtered through the Fed. Every country gets filtered through the Fed. It's not just the U.S. budgets, it's every country's budgets that go to the Fed. It doesn't matter what you do. Still they wait for every new moon and full moon for something to happen. And I'm up here saying, no production lines, guys. Nothing's happening. There's no need for new money. There's nothing that is contributing to the functionality of the financial system of the planet. It's not working. So back to stablecoin. We're going to revisit something that I did back in March of 2018. And I'm going to pull up this spreadsheet here, talk to you about that for a second. And I'll tell you why your stable coin, even if you intend on backing it with gold, is not going to work. So let's get Mike to bring that up for me, if you would. I was looking for a way, I know this is little tiny numbers, you're going to have to do the zooming to take a look at those numbers. I was looking at finding a way to fix the financial system because, as you know, 10 years prior, there was a market crash. No one was buying any derivatives or bonds anymore. We were certainly not doing that. And we were not indebting the people of the world anymore. So I had to try to find a way to go to a gold-backed system, which is what I thought the then people that were allegedly in charge of the U.S. were wanting to do. I thought they wanted to go to a gold-backed system. I mean, heck, every general I talked to at that time, General Hill and others, that said they wanted to go to a gold-backed system. And I tried to explain to them at that time, this was even before 2018, that gold was the ultimate equalizer. And he shut up. He's like, what do you mean? So I explained to people what I meant. So this is a little spreadsheet that I did. And what I had to do was use an old an old bond number that came from the UN as an excuse to put an influx of cash, because I used that as my production line. Because remember, it's all about maintaining production. And I put new money into the system based on the cost of a global bullet train. That's what it was called at the time, or what you call global high-speed rail train. And I calculated all these numbers based on that cost, because at that time it was 20 trillion, $100 trillion or something like that. So I could use that as an excuse and as a production line to start funding countries. Now, remember, this was 2018. It was a while ago. I've learned an awful lot since, and I've also pulled all of this money in gold back since. Now, per contract at the time that this was done, the ratio of gold to dollars, I used the old numbers before Bretton Woods and we went off the gold standard, was 25 to 1. That was for the Treasury. It was 50 to 1 for the Fed, but I went to a 25 to 1 ratio. Remember, they had to turn in all of that gold over to the system, which would also get a number that you call hallmarking, right? That's also a number. The hallmarking numbers plus the registrations of what we call the in-ground vaults and bunkers, that everybody thinks that there's some hole in the wall in the Philippines where you can just access a bunker and a bunch of gold is going to come out of some old Asian person's you-know-what. And that's never going to happen. I'm talking about the veins of gold that run through Earth all the way through to its core. They were all leveraged. They were all a part of the alpha system. That's how we gained control of the gold. Now that gold has moved over to the golden age AI. This includes super sites that I know you're looking at that are on your ridiculous treasury sheets from people that think that they're smart, from like Spectrum Consulting and other organizations that wrote potential plans back in the 1990s for you to execute on, which is why you think you can issue a new stablecoin at the Treasury. However, boys and girls, I have that gold. It's already leveraged. It's been leveraged several times, as a matter of fact. And because I run the numbers system on the back end, I can leverage it as much as I want. I can set the ratios. But at that time, when you were looking at that spreadsheet, we basically made a decision, or I shouldn't say we, I made a decision to issue about 10% of each country's gross domestic product based on the fact that there would be a new production line called the high-speed rail train. In addition to that, I used the 25-to-1 ratio based on the numbers back in 2018 to issue gold in the amount of around $700 billion worth of gold to support 10%. 10% at a 25-to-1 ratio of the world's influx of cash. The cash was issued in every currency along with gold to back it in existence in the world. Now, the deep state, of course, claimed it was them, but it wasn't. It was me. And I just proved to you, people that are watching this, whether it's the SSP or otherwise, that I'm the one that did it because I actually sat there for hours and calculated everything out, values of currencies and whatnot. So, these people that would like to order what I call coin, but stable coin, because they think stable coin is going to be backed by gold. Now, if I took the amount of US dollars in circulation based on gross domestic product and increases each year and things that you haven't gotten for about a decade, well, since the Trump administration, because I also issued it then, you are going to need well over $10 trillion in value at a 25-to-1 ratio in gold. Do you have $10 trillion or more in gold? No, you don't. And I can tell you with 100% certainty that those alleged bars of gold and the fake HSBC certificates and all that crap is not going to get you there from here. It's not. Not even close. No. So you're going to be digging holes for an awfully long time in order to achieve this objective, because even in the hallmarking system, I have all that registered gold as well. You gave it to me. At least your predecessors did, in order to bounce through the whole system and get money, or what you called money or debt instruments, from Alpha through Omega, through the ANNA system, down to the Federal Reserve, and eventually down to Treasury level 3, and then eventually down to you, the consumer, which barely there was nothing left at that point in time anyway. So the thought process of replacing a dollar with, or the currency, which we're now changing everything. So, but at the time, the thought about changing the dollar debt instrument, because of course they still want you, the humans, to be indebted to them. They don't want to erase the old system. They want to control the old system. So they are looking at these control points, like today at the ANNA system, as a possible way to control the financial system of the world. But you're wrong again. There are things in this world that the deep state doesn't even understand. But now you all understand, and hopefully they're watching this too, and maybe they'll understand. So when you tell me you want to issue stablecoin and you want to use a blockchain technology to do it, I think you've lost your ever-loving mind. Because there's no way your blockchain is going to be able to calculate the need for money into the system. Nor do you have the capacity to even issue the amount of gold to back stablecoin on a 1-to-1 ratio. I had to laugh when I heard that one. I'm like, are you kidding me right now? I did it on a 25-to-1 ratio. And yet they've got the Pentagon convinced this is a good idea. So withstanding the fact that there was a test that happened during the pandemic time in the world where they tried to say we were having a coin shortage and cash shortage and it was unsanitary. You remember all of this, guys. And it was a test to see if you would all go digital, if people would stop using cash. And it didn't even work in America. I don't know if they ran similar tests in other countries, but I definitely know that that was happening here, and it didn't work. With regardless of that, issuing a different kind of stable coin or dodgy coin or whatever you guys promised Elon Musk, and I already know the answer to that question, or any other country or BRICS or whoever's trying to issue a new currency, it's not going to solve your problem. You think it's going to be able to control the financial system of your country or the world, and eventually, and that's what BRICS wants, and I know that, and God bless the Treasury people and the secret space program folks. But they're very short-sighted as to what it actually takes to issue new money into a system. And if I know your system is unstable, despite it being called stablecoin, I know your system is unstable, and I know it doesn't have the computing power that is required to handle production lines worldwide versus the issuance of new currency into the system. You won't make it 5 minutes. You tried to first install it into the old Fed. You tried to install it into the Treasury today. I watched you people do it. It didn't work, did it? Because you are unstable. Not only are you people mentally unstable at this point, I'm sorry to say, but you are. You don't understand the system. You don't understand why it was built this way. And they certainly don't understand that issuing stablecoin is not going to fix the financial system of the world. You are unstable. Therefore, I cannot allow you to install coin. I can't do it. And you know what I mean by shh. We'll leave the rest of the word out. You're not going to be able to sustain a system that is global with the technology you have. Your tiny itty bitty quantum computers, even if you were to use the ones under Oak Ridge or whatever doesn't work anymore, or the old IBM MERS system and all the other things you perceive as quantum, you don't know quantum when I break it down to the amount of tomatoes sold in the world. Now, do you? Impossibility. Not only do you need to calculate production lines, you also need to calculate the amount of cars on the road versus the amount of road repairs that'll be necessary based on the amount of wear and tear and the number of vehicles on particular roads in particular states and particular cities and particular towns, in particular provinces. You're never going to do it. The system must remain stable for the safety of the planet and the safety of humanity. But I will not allow level 8, 7, 6, 5, that includes you military people, 4, 3, and 2 to get in my way anymore. You failed when I've transferred trillions of dollars on that spreadsheet in 2018. You failed when I transferred trillions of dollars in 2012. And you certainly failed when I just did tiny bits to the U.S. budgets. A couple times I paid that, paid a bunch of money to the military before, counted on you people to step up and do something right. You level 5 people. I tried even level 4 people and talking to corporations and electric companies as an example to converting to new technologies. And you people failed on level 4. I have had endless conversations with level 2 compliance officers and bankers and all those people at levels 3 and 4. And Lord knows we've been to level 3 Treasury many, many times. I went level by level by level. And you all didn't do it. Therefore, I'm now stuck with a production deficiency. Because even if you back a currency with gold, new Allocations of money are still based on supply and demand. The only thing that gold does is it keeps you honest. Those high yield trade programs, derivative programs, and all of those other debt programs have to go out the window when we go back to an asset-based trading system. That just means if you're going to have a new dollar to come into the system, you need to have the value of gold to support it. You also need to have the stability to complete your production contracts. Now, speaking of production contracts and overissuance of production contracts, this is something else that people need to be aware of. On the black market, they would issue, and they did this for decades and decades, really since the advent of money, nearly 500 years ago. But what they would do is they would issue production contracts, say, from a place like Russia. Let's take Russia as an example. They would issue production contracts for quadrillions worth of oil and gas and diamonds and gold against unmined diamonds and unmined gold and unpumped or drilled oil. Then they would take those production contracts and issue derivatives off of them, send the derivatives through the Fed to the ANA system, and eventually over to Omega, and then eventually Omega sends everything to Alpha. Alpha issued new allocations for quadrillions of dollars in your oil that you still haven't pumped to this very day, basically both to back the ruble and also back the world's financial system and production of oil. I understand oil and gas is sold in dollars, so there's a support for the dollar there. The production line is credited to the dollar, but the labor still is credited to the ruble. I know that's another calculation it does. Isn't that fancy? And so now I have a lien, which I carried over the Central Securities Depository for Planet Earth. I carried that over to the Golden Age AI. I have a lien because I needed to keep that in case they get froggy, and try to re-lien something. Now I have a lien against all of that. I also have a lien against all the gas in Israel, and a lien against all of the Iranian oil, and a lien against all of the Iraqi oil and everywhere else. Yes, I understand they're pumping it and they're selling it. But as far as a high-level new currency issuance production line, you don't have it. Even if you were going to take, and you remember this from a few years ago, where the IMF decided to take a basket of commodities to support currencies in the world, that still didn't work. They tried to leverage it over to the Shanghai Exchange in China because, of course, China's supposed to be in line for running the world next after the U.S. bottoms out. And it got blocked every time by me because you can't re-leverage something. You owe me the deficiency in production that you did not produce for the financial system supply and demand to work. You didn't. So eventually the system bottomed out on production lines and the new money was cut off because there was nothing left to leverage. There was no more production you could possibly produce because it all went into the black market off-ledger systems. That's the reason why the black market off-ledger systems had to be pulled, because otherwise there could be no more new money in the system because you guys messed it up, meaning the deep state messed it up. And are you still supporting the farmers? No, you're not. You're trying to give them loans, for crying out loud. Do I have enough tomatoes in the grocery stores? Well, I certainly didn't have enough toilet paper, but we paid for it, didn't we? The great toilet paper crisis, that existed. That was funny. Anyway, the point is that I understand what they're trying to do here. And I understand the increase in prices and everything was firstly to pay to put vaccines in food. That was one thing. The reason why the cost of food went up. But the other reason is because they're trying to find a way to get new money into the system. If the cost goes up, then, well, they're going to need more production money, allegedly. But I know it costs the same to grow a tomato as it cost years ago, minus the fact they keep increasing the cost of fertilizers. And, of course, you don't want the seeds that will come back every year. You don't want the plants to come back every year. So you've got your GMO seeds and all the other crazy things that you people do. But again, the deep state broke the system. So to the SSP and the Trump operatives and the Treasury Department and all the other people that are listening to this right now, because I know you do, please understand, God bless you for thinking stablecoin is the solution, really. And God bless you if you thought that the ANNA system actually runs the system that calculates all those numbers worldwide. God bless you. But please, for the love of God, deep state people, grab yourself an economist, grab yourself a quantum physicist, and realize everything you're doing is a lie. You're never going to pull it off. There is no more omega functional systems. You might see little things here and there. And as we're moving things over from alpha, over to the new system and that kind of thing, which you'll still see them in existence because you keep trying to hack them. And I know that. But please understand, that's not your system. It's never was your system. And your crazy ideas of how to run a world's financial system are 100% inaccurate, because at this level in the game, none of them, the people that everybody's listening to, have ever played at this level. You have never understood the creation of a financial system. And not only that, they don't understand what it takes to keep it stable. They are not qualified to run a system on this level. And I know they're like, hey, she's just a blonde lady and she's just a human. But if I've showed you nothing else this evening, I've proven to you that I actually know what I'm doing. And I've done this. And I've funded the governments. I went down to level 3. Now you understand what a level 3 is. I funded level 3, level 6. I funded all kinds of things. I used to pass through the gauntlet of your old gatekeeper programs and all those other crazy things that were also not installed by you. And now, okay, so maybe I butt heads with the NSA every once in a while on level 1, or some banker or switches off a web server or redirects a web server or a load balancer or some kind of computer equipment or something in a bank. Okay, fine. I'll give you that one. But then when you do, I just take that away too. So hopefully, we are not too far away from reaching the farmers and the widget makers and the people of the world very soon, who I know desperately need relief. And I am working, I promise you, 18 hours a day, every day, 7 days a week to make it happen. I am working really hard. At the same time, I'm also working, because you remember, I'm doing multiple jobs. We got a marketplace we're starting to, get up and running. That takes work too. I still have to give the input for the categories and layouts and all that kind of stuff. So even though we have people coding it, it's still the design, that we work on from here. Plus there's the oil things that I'm still working on. I'm behind on getting some restocking in. Hopefully I'll have that in this week, coming up. Hopefully. And I still got to deal with every once in a while an anti-Genesis project here or there, or crazy people on a full moon trying to think they're going to take control of the world or something. I don't know. But again, I know people are hurting, and I know you want to see change. But unfortunately, the only way to change it is to start with piece by piece and bit by bit of every aspect of this system has to be broken or taken over, that if it needs to be sustained. There are millions of other programs that are gone. Things that we don't have time to talk about in this report because it'd be way too long. Maybe that's not even a mini series. That's probably a 10-year series at this point to explain what each system did. It's just a bigger task than I think a lot of people understand. And I definitely know the deep state doesn't understand it because they keep trying to issue these treasury coins and dinars and all this kind of stuff, but there's no reason for the calculations and the algorithms, although the algorithms in golden age are now geared towards currency. We use gold in the new system, not because it's shiny and it has a hallmark and it has a bar. We use gold because it actually generates energy, which then gets converted on level 8 to currency. I know that's a whole nother story for another day. But now you understand that I can put money into the system for other reasons. The energy needs to come out. It needs to come out in better numbers. I mean, our supply chain should be 8765432 at this point, meaning money comes in, obviously not money anymore, currency. Currency comes into the system. You need to have things. You need to have a place to live, a car to drive. You need to fix your car. You need to send your kids to school. You need to have food in your home. You need to have all the things you need to have, and toothbrushes and toothpaste and, some kind of care, whether that's naturopathic or otherwise. You need things in your life. And we need, as a society, meaning humans, not to be reliant on large corporations anymore for those services. So you've got a big task, and CARE has a big task of making sure, based on the numbers we have from the Association of Numerical Numbering Agency, which it's not really even that anymore. Nothing even really passes through it there anymore. But based on the algorithm that runs in the system, we are now responsible for ourselves. It's a big job. It's a huge task to make sure we have all those tomatoes in the grocery store, that we can support, X amount of people being able to buy a new car now. Who's going to make all those cars? What if you can get a loan that's not a loan? It's actually a car allocation based on the amount of X that you need. Say you get a car allocation. Who's going to make all those cars if everybody's getting a car allocation? Things to think about. As we restructure the system, there has to be some kind of semblance of order. In other words, we're not recreating the order. We're not trying to control the world. We're trying to maintain it so that everybody stays safe. And that is a huge job. So, that being said, I think I've given you a whole lot of information this evening in the intelligence report. I hope that you take some time to, if you're not a math person, I understand that, but just at least understand the bigger picture here. If you're with the deep state or the Trump people or the Treasury or whatever, and you're watching this, I hope you understand why I said no. I can't afford the system to break because you want to be rich people and you want to have a war. Sorry, can't do it. There's no money for that anymore. There's no currency for that anymore. The world is a changing place, and we all need to change and adapt and overcome. And together, as humanity, standing united, maybe not with the crazy people in the other section there, but with one another, we'll make sure we have the food we need. We'll have the medicines. We have plant terpenes that really haven't even been explored worldwide. They've been exploited and then reproduced synthetically. A lot of the stuff that we have is synthetic, especially here in America. We just need to produce these in a different way, and we need to support, our farmers that grow all that lavender and, that gets you to sleep at night and all these other things directly, as well as support you because you maybe bake the bread or you maybe do something different. And everybody will contribute as a whole, just like we used to. It takes a village to raise a child. Well, it takes a village to raise the world too. And the more united we are and stop arguing with each other and throwing, it's people, I see it all the time. You attack each other because you have a different point of view. of what's really going on in the world. And just try to be a little nicer to each other. You know, you don't need to attack somebody for having a different idea or a different point of view than you have. You know, just try to be a little bit gentler with each other. But also don't be surprised when people defend themselves, you know, against you. And maybe that's what you want. You want to spread more negativity, transmute, so you keep feeding that whatever is limping along of Omega, right? Or Chronos these days. I should say more Chronos than anything. There's not much left of, there's not much left of Chronos either. But, let's not feed the beast, literally, literally, don't feed the beast. Try and be a little nicer to each other and think about things, about what your part is and what you can do to keep all of humanity going, because we're not going to have that mommy and daddy anymore. It's going to be up to us. And like Sunny always says, if it's going to be up to me, it's up to all of us. And I agree with her. So on that note, I hope you have a wonderful weekend, and I will see you on Monday.